The Atlantic Cable. Among the applications of the telegraph which deserve special mention for magnitude and importance is the Atlantic Cable. For boldness of conception, tireless persistence in execution, and value of results, this engineering feat, though nearly a half-century old, still challenges the admiration of the world and marks the beginning of one of the great epics of the 19th century. It was not so brilliant in substantive invention, as it added but little to the telegraph as already known, beyond the means for insulating the wires within a gutta-percha cable, but it was one of the greatest of all engineering works. It was chiefly the result of the energy and public spirit of Mr. Cyrus W. Field, an eminent American citizen. 3 times was its laying attempted before success crowned the work. The first expedition sailed August 7, 1857, and consisted of a fleet of 8 vessels, for American and for English, starting from Valentia on the Irish coast. On August 11 the cable parted, and 344 miles of the cable were lost in water to miles deep. In 1858, a renewal of the effort to lay the cable was made. Improvements were added in the paying-out machinery, and a different manner of coiling the enormous load of cable on the vessels was resorted to, and provisions also were made to protect the propeller from contact with the cable. On June 10, the telegraphic fleet steamed out of Plymouth Harbor. It consisted of the U.S. frigate Niagara, with the paddle-wheel steamer Valorous as a tender, and the British frigate Agamemnon, with the paddle-wheel steamer Gorgon as a tender. After 3 days at sea, terrible gales were encountered and much damage resulted. The vessels were to proceed to mid-ocean, and the portions of the cable carried by the Niagara and Agamemnon were to be spliced, and the 2 vessels were then to sail in opposite directions to their respective coasts. The first splice was made on the 26th of June. After paying out 2.5 miles each, the cable parted. Again meeting and splicing, 40 miles each were paid out, and the cable again parted. On the 28th another splicing was effected, and 150 miles each were paid out, and again the cable parted, and the expedition had to be abandoned. After much financial embarrassment and adverse criticism, the courageous and public-spirited directors who had control of the enterprise dispatched another expedition, which sailed July 17, 1858. The 2 vessels, Niagara and Agamemnon, with their tenders, proceeded to mid-ocean, and following the same method of connecting the ends of their respective cable sections, they sailed in opposite directions. On August 5, 1858, Mr. Cyrus Field announced by telegram from Trinity Bay, on the coast of Newfoundland, that Trinity Bay in America and Valentia in Ireland, 2,134 miles apart, had been connected, and the Great Atlantic Cable was an established fact.
On August 16, 1858, the first message came over from Queen Victoria to President Buchanan of the United States as follows. To the President of the United States, Washington. The Queen desires to congratulate the President upon the successful completion of this great international work, in which the Queen has taken the deepest interest. The Queen is convinced that the President will join with her in fervently hoping that the electric cable which now connects Great Britain with the United States will prove an additional link between the nations whose friendship is founded upon their common interest and reciprocal esteem. The Queen has much pleasure in thus communicating with the President and renewing to him her wishes for the prosperity of the United States. To which the President replied as follows. To Her Majesty Victoria, Queen of Great Britain, the President cordially reciprocates the congratulations of Her Majesty, the Queen, on the success of the great international enterprise accomplished by the science, skill, and indomitable energy of the 2 countries. It is a triumph more glorious, because far more useful to mankind than was ever won by conqueror on the field of battle. May the Atlantic Telegraph, under the blessing of heaven, prove to be a bond of perpetual peace and friendship between the kindred nations, and an instrument destined by divine providence to diffuse religion, civilization, liberty, and law throughout the world. In this view, will not all nations of Christendom spontaneously unite in the declaration that it shall be forever neutral, and that its communications shall be held sacred in passing to their places of destination, even in the midst of hostilities? Great rejoicing on both sides of the ocean followed, and the public print was filled with accounts of the enterprise. The following selection from the Atlantic Monthly of October 1858 is an apostrophe in lofty sentiments of verse, which today stirs the 20th century heart as a joyous prophecy fulfilled. Thou lonely bay of Trinity, ye bosky shores untrod, lean, breathless, to the white-lipped sea, and hear the voice of God. From world to world his couriers fly, thought-winged and shod with fire. The angel of his stormy sky rides down the sunken wire. What saith the herald of the Lord? The world's long strife is done, close wedded by that mystic cord, her continents are one. Through Orient seas, o'er Afric's plain, and Asian mountains borne, the vigor of the northern brain shall nerve the world outworn. From clime to clime, from shore to shore, shall thrill the magic thread. The new Prometheus steals once more, the fire that wakes the dead. Earth, gray with age, shall hear the strain which o'er her childhood rolled. For her the morning stars again shall sing their song of old. For lo, the fall of ocean's wall, space mocked and time outrun, and round the world the thought of all is as the thought of one. O reverently and thankfully the mighty wonder own. The deaf can hear, the blind may see, the work is God's alone. Throb on, strong pulse of thunder, beat from answering beach to beach. Fuse nations in thy kindly heat, and melt the chains of each. Wild terror of the sky above, glide tamed and dumb below. Bear gently, ocean's carrier dove, thy errands to and fro. Weave on, swift shuttle of the Lord. Beneath the deep so far, the bridal robe of earth's accord, the funeral shroud of war. The poles unite, the zones agree, the tongues of striving cease. As on the Sea of Galilee, the Christ is whispering, peace. After a few months of working, the cable became inoperative, but its success was a demonstrated fact, and in 1866 a new cable was laid by the aid of that monster steamer, the Great Eastern. Since which time the cable has become one of the great factors of modern civilization. Probably the most important of the inventions relating to submarine telegraphs is the siphon recorder, invented by Sir William Thomson, now Lord Kelvin, U.S. Pat. No. 156-897, Nova 17th, 1874. It is called a siphon recorder because the record is made by a little glass siphon down which a flow of ink is maintained like a fountain pen. This siphon is vibrated by the electric impulses to produce on the paper strip a zigzag line, whose varying contour is made to represent letters. In the illustration, Fig. 15, M is an inkwell, O a strip of paper, and N the ink siphon, one end of which is bent and dips down into the inkwell, and the other end of which traces the record on the moving paper strip O. The siphon is sustained on a vertical axis L, and its lateral vibration is effected as follows. A light rectangular coil BB of exceedingly fine insulated wire is suspended between the poles NS of a powerful electromagnet energized by a local battery. In the coil BB is a stationary soft iron core A, magnetized by the poles NS. The coil BB is suspended upon a vertical axis consisting of a fine wire FF, and the delicate electrical impulses over the submarine cable enter the coil BB through the axial wire F as a conductor, and cause a greater or less oscillation of the coil B between the poles NS of the electromagnet. The coil BB is connected by a thread K to the siphon, and pulls the siphon in one direction, while the siphon is pulled in the opposite direction by a helical spring attached to an arm on the siphon axis L. Today there lie in submerged silence, but pulsating with the life of the world, no less than 1,500 submarine telegraphs. Their aggregate length is 170,000 miles. Their total estimated cost is $250,000, and the number of messages annually transmitted over them is 6,000. 13 cables work daily across the Atlantic, and an additional one is being laid from Germany. Messages now go across the Atlantic and are received on the siphon recorder at the rate of 50 words a minute, and at a cost of 25 cents a word. Our guns may thunder in the Philippines, and the news by cable, traveling faster than the Earth on its axis, may reach the Western Hemisphere under the paradoxical condition of several hours earlier than it occurred. Cablegrams to Manila cost $2.38 a word, and the cable tolls for our War Department alone are costing at the rate of $325,000 a year. The logical outcome is a Pacific cable, a bill for which, connecting San Francisco and Honolulu, has already passed the United States Senate. Messages from the executive mansion at Washington to the battlefield at Santiago were sent and responses received within 12 minutes, while a message dispatched from the House of Representatives in Washington to the House of Parliament in London in the chess match of 1898 was transmitted and a reply received in 13½ seconds. Today, the cable, with the still small voice, more divine than human, speaks with one accent to all the nations of the earth. Differing though they may in tongue and skin, in thought and religion, in physical development and clime, the telegraph speaks to them all alike, and by all is understood. Truly it fulfills the prophecy so gracefully expressed in the verses quoted, and has become the common bond of union among the nations of the earth.